Under your car, right now, there is a metal box. It sits between the engine and the exhaust pipe. It has been there since the vehicle was built. You have probably never thought about it. Inside that box are roughly 3 to 7 grams of platinum, 2 to 7 grams of palladium, and 1 to 2 grams of a metal so rare that 1 ounce of it once traded for nearly $30,000, while an ounce of gold sat at roughly $1,800. That metal is rhodium, and for roughly 3 years, criminals across the United States slid under cars in parking lots, in driveways, in church lots, in dealership rows, and sawed off that metal box in under 2 minutes. By 2022, roughly 153,000 catalytic converters were stolen in a single year. The wave became so large that the FBI opened a nationwide investigation and, in November 2022, arrested 21 people, executed 32 search warrants across 5 states, and sought the forfeiture of over $545 million in assets, not from gold, not from diamonds, from catalytic converters. The catalytic converter was invented to clean the air. It takes the most toxic gases in engine exhaust, carbon monoxide, nitrogen oxides, unburned hydrocarbons, and converts them into carbon dioxide, nitrogen, and water vapor. It has been mandatory on every gasoline car sold in the United States since 1975. To do that chemical work, the converter uses a ceramic honeycomb coated with 3 platinum group metals: platinum, palladium, and rhodium. Platinum alone is worth roughly $1,000 an ounce. Palladium has swung between $500 and $3,000 an ounce over the past decade. But rhodium is the one that changes the story. A single catalytic converter can contain between 1 and 2 grams of rhodium, less than the weight of a paperclip. But at the peak of the rhodium market in 2021, 1 gram traded at roughly $960. The rhodium alone in a single converter was worth over $1,000. And it was sitting under the car, in a box nobody thought about. Here is what separates rhodium from gold. Gold is mined at roughly 3,000 metric tons per year. Rhodium is mined at roughly 30 metric tons per year. It is 100 times rarer. It is the rarest precious metal on Earth, and roughly 80% of the world's supply comes from a small region in South Africa, where a single disruption, a strike, a power failure, a processing bottleneck, sends the price into violent spikes. In early 2021, rhodium hit nearly $30,000 per troy ounce. Gold at that same moment was roughly $1,800. Rhodium was more than 15 times the price of gold. Nobody talks about rhodium. Nobody knows what it is. But for roughly 3 years, it was the most valuable thing in any car on the road, hidden in plain sight, bolted to the exhaust system. So why did rhodium suddenly become worth more than 15 times its weight in gold? 3 things collided at once. First, rhodium has no replacement. It is the only metal that can scrub nitrogen oxides out of exhaust at the temperatures inside a converter. Platinum cannot do it. Palladium cannot do it. If you want a clean gasoline engine, you need rhodium. There is no substitute. Second, emission standards around the world kept getting stricter, which forced automakers to pack more rhodium into every converter. Demand climbed year after year. Third, the supply broke. In 2020, the pandemic shut down mines across South Africa, where roughly 80% of the world's rhodium comes from. A key processing plant suffered repeated outages. Supply collapsed just as car production roared back. No substitute. Rising demand. collapsing supply, and almost no stockpiles to cushion the blow. The price did the only thing it could. It exploded, climbing roughly 10 times in about a year. The price crashed again in 2023 and 2024, falling as electric vehicle adoption cut into demand forecasts. But even at lower prices, the metal inside a catalytic converter is still worth hundreds of dollars, and during the spike, it turned ordinary parking lots into crime scenes. The tool required is a battery-powered reciprocating saw, roughly $100 at any hardware store. The act takes less than 2 minutes. Slide under the vehicle, cut the pipe on both sides, pull the converter out, leave. The Toyota Prius was hit more than almost any other car because its hybrid engine burns cleaner, meaning the converter holds a higher concentration of precious metals. SUVs and trucks were common targets because the ground clearance is high enough that a thief does not even need a jack, according to Carfax data. In 2022, roughly 153,000 catalytic converters were reported stolen across the United States. California reported more catalytic converter thefts than any other state. The crime was so concentrated, so fast, and so lucrative that federal investigators built a case. One stolen converter, scrapped for its metals, could net a thief between $50 and $300. An organized ring moving thousands per month could generate tens of millions in a year. And the metal moved through the supply chain so fast it was almost impossible to trace. Almost. Here is the cruelest part of the whole crime wave. The thief was never the one who lost the most. A thief sold a stolen converter for maybe $50 to $300, but the owner who woke up to a sawed-off exhaust pipe paid far more to fix it. A replacement converter with parts and labor often ran $1,000 to $3,000. On a hybrid or a luxury car, even more. And at the peak of the theft wave, replacement converters were back-ordered for weeks, so people could not drive to work while they waited. Some owners had comprehensive insurance that covered the loss. Many did not, or had deductibles that ate most of the payout. So follow the money. A $200 payday for the thief, a $2,000 loss for the victim, and a metal worth around $1,000 sitting in between. Value bled out at every step of the chain, and all of it flowed from a single part that nobody had ever once looked at. In November 2022, the United States Department of Justice announced the takedown of a nationwide catalytic converter theft network. 21 defendants arrested, 32 search warrants executed across 5 states: California, Oklahoma, Texas, New Jersey, and New York. The indictment described a multi-layered operation. Street-level thieves stole converters from vehicles and sold them to intermediaries for cash. The intermediaries then sold them to a company called DG Auto, which processed the converters and extracted the precious metal powders. The numbers were staggering. DG Auto sold the metal powders it processed to a refinery for over $545 million. The Department of Justice filed a 40-count indictment. The government moved to seize homes, luxury vehicles, bank accounts, and cash, and sought the forfeiture of over $545 million tied to the scheme. That was one ring. There were others, and even after the takedown, the thefts did not stop. They came down from the peak as rhodium prices fell and new laws passed, but converters were still being stolen across the country, every single day. A box under the car, worth more, gram for gram, than almost anything else the vehicle was made of. The catalytic converter story is not about crime. It is about attention. For decades, the catalytic converter was invisible. It was a compliance device, a metal box bolted to the exhaust system that nobody thought about until the check engine light came on. Mechanics replaced them and sent the old ones to scrap. That was the entire story. But inside that invisible box was one of the rarest metals on Earth. It had been there since 1975, and almost nobody, not the car owners, not the mechanics, not the scrappers, nobody saw the catalytic converter as a vault, until the price of rhodium went to the moon, and suddenly the invisible box became the most visible part of the car. The same pattern repeats everywhere. The dead phone in the drawer has gold. The $2 bill in the wallet has value. The catalytic converter under the car has rhodium. The value was always there. What changed was the attention. Money is a tool. It is not an identity, but attention is the difference between a catalytic converter and a vault. And you do not know right now what else is bolted to the underside of your life that you have never bothered to look at. So here is the question. What else could be worth more than you think? Hidden somewhere in your daily life, under something, inside something that you have never taken a second look at. And if you do not know the answer, what would it cost you to find out? Subscribe to Money Fails. Real stories, real mistakes, real lessons. Because the most valuable metal on Earth has been riding beneath every car on the road for 50 years. And almost nobody looked down. See you in the next one.